I definitely knew I would need some alcohol for this video. Hi everyone, I'm Sean, and today I'm going to be reviewing Dracula by Bram Stoker. Now, the first thing I had to decide for this video was what to wear. I wanted to wear something that would be like themed for Dracula. So I thought, let's see, this undead person who feeds off of the blood of the living. Who could I choose for that? So I wore my Hillary Clinton 2008 shirt. My drink of choice, as usual, is a White Russian made famous by the Big Lebowski. Not bad. Should I do it with or without the hat? I kind of like the hat. Let's go with the hat for now. Guys, let's not do that. So a few years ago, I had read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and I liked it pretty well. So when I started Dracula, I was kind of having high hopes or high expectations. I wanted it to be like another Frankenstein, a classic horror book that was as good as it was supposed to be, or whatever, that it deserved all the attention it's gotten. Now, did it? When I started the book, I was pretty happy, I guess, to see that the writing style was very much like Frankenstein in that it was conveyed to readers mostly or exclusively through letters or journal entries. And Frankenstein was much the same way. So right off the bat, I was like, okay, I think it is what I was expecting. It's basically another Frankenstein-esque story. So I was pretty optimistic about it. But that did not last long. Early on, something that was driving me crazy is that anytime anyone would mention the name Dracula or the Count, all the townspeople in Transylvania would cross themselves. Every single one of them. I don't know, it's just like, hello, can you not see that there's something wrong here? Right away, that made me think it was terribly overdone. There was no subtlety in it. Just anytime someone mentions the Count, or is it left to right or right to left? I don't know. But anyway, it should be left to right because left is always better. And this was a problem as the book went on. As soon as we met the Count, I was pretty excited because Count Dracula is such a popular character in fiction. He's been represented so many times. He's such a classic character that I was pretty excited to finally meet him. But as soon as we meet him, he's described as having sharp fang teeth protruding from his mouth. So it's like, I mean, what do you think? He's a vampire. How can you not see that? So I want to get this out there first. Dracula is such a well-known character in all of our culture, really. I mean, everyone knows who Count or what Count Dracula is. Everyone knows he does not like garlic. He does not have a reflection. That vampires bite people and suck their blood, and that you have to stake them through the heart and all this stuff. And also that they turn into a bat and all this stuff. That is all well known. And even if you haven't seen Dracula, I haven't seen any of the Dracula movies, I pretty much know the Dracula story. Everyone knows the Dracula story. And this is kind of the problem because for us, when we meet Count Dracula and he's described as having sharp fangs protruding from his mouth, we are like, duh, can't you see he is a vampire? But people who read the book in the time may not have known that. They may not have gotten that because, of course, the Dracula story wasn't out then. Whereas now we all know. So that is kind of a problem with the book, is everything that may have been subtle when the book was written is obvious to us. We are well ahead of what the author is trying to do. So, when he describes at length these characters being mystified by people having strange two marks on their throat. Well, we obviously know they got bit by the vampire. But Stoker drags it out. So for literally 150 pages, no one knows what's going on really. Or it takes 150 pages to finally reveal it's a vampire. But even before we even get into the story, just the name Count Dracula, we know he's a vampire. But here's basically the problem with that. I had never also seen Frankenstein or any of the Frankenstein movies, except like Young Frankenstein. So I was already familiar, even without seeing those movies, I was familiar with the Frankenstein story. I know this Dr. Frankenstein uses body parts or whatever to bring this creature back to life, and he turns out to be a monster and starts killing everyone. So we already knew that. I knew that when I started Frankenstein, but I still enjoyed the book Frankenstein. That is not the case with Dracula. And I tried to think of a reason for why this could be, and I think part of it is just that Stoker tried to keep Dracula's identity kind of a mystery. Like, he wanted the characters to not really know for a while what is causing all these attacks with tooth marks or whatever. They don't even know it's tooth marks at the throat. So he was kind of trying to keep that a secret, but for us who know the Dracula story, it's the worst kept secret in the world. In that way, I think the book is kind of doomed from the start. And like I said, even though I do give it credit that we know the Dracula story and the people at the time did not, still, I knew the Frankenstein story and I still enjoyed it. I knew the Dracula story, but I did not enjoy it really. Frankenstein was not written in that way, so it did not have just 150 pages of this doctor gathering body parts and you don't know why, even though we know he's creating the monster. Frankenstein is not written that way. It's pretty clear what's going on, what the doctor is intending to do. So there's really no mystery about it. But Dracula is kind of written as a mystery. I forgot I had this White Russian. I forgot this was supposed to be a drunk video. One of the problems I felt with the book is that I want to say it was horribly overacted. And I know it's a book, so maybe I should say it's horribly overwritten. But Bram Stoker came from a career in the theater. So I think overacted is actually a good word for it, or a good phrase for it. And part of the thing is, like I said, I've never seen the original Dracula movies, but from watching clips of it, I always thought Bela Lugosi was kind of overacting. And reading Dracula, I realized he was not overacting. He was basically doing an accurate portrayal of Bram Stoker's book, Bram Stoker's Dracula. But Stoker wrote it in such a way that it had to be overacted. For instance, just when a crucifix is near him, I think he literally pulls his cape over his mouth or his head and is like, a terrified expression. I thought that came from the overacting school of Bela Lugosi, but it's right out of the book. This is also the reason why I think Dracula is so susceptible to spoofs, because the way it's written, it's almost a spoof in itself. People seeing this character with fangs protruding out of his mouth and they're like, oh, hello, sir. I mean, it's a vampire. How can you not see it's a vampire? But the characters are completely oblivious to it. And so in spoofs, they do the same thing. You know, you see the obvious vampire and the characters are just blind to it. And in a spoof, that makes it funny. But in the novel, that's how it really was. Dracula is called a horror story, but I don't think it was anything horrific. I think it was just comical. Birds. And it wasn't meant to be comical is the problem. And it wasn't so bad it was good. It was just bad. It was just an all-around failure, I think. The main thing I will give Bram Stoker credit for, and I want to be very clear about this because it's important, is he did create birds. These characters, such as Count Dracula and Van Helsing, who I'll get to in a little bit, and the thing about garlic and mirrors and crucifixes and all this stuff that we know about vampires that's just so ingrained to our culture came from Bram Stoker's book. So I give him credit for that. For instance, whenever you have garlic or think about garlic or put something on garlic or whatever, odds are in some place in your mind you think about Dracula or vampires. I mean, that is just the identity of garlic now, is so much Dracula. It's so tied together with Dracula. And to do that, I think that's pretty cool. So I do give Stoker credit for that. Okay, the character of Van Helsing, Professor Van Helsing. When he was finally introduced in the story, I was like, yes! There's another character's name that I was very familiar with, the great vampire hunter Van Helsing. So his appearance around page 100 or so kind of promised some action, and I felt the book was in desperate need of it because no one could connect all the dots that were, of course, very obvious to us. So when he was introduced, I was finally like, yes! I mean, now we can finally get it out that it's a vampire and get the story going. And now, I will say this too, when Van Helsing gets into the story, one of the first things he does early on is he spreads garlic all throughout the room. And when he did that, I thought that was just such a eureka moment, because I knew then he's onto it. He knows there's a vampire situation here. And I think that was ultimately my favorite moment in the book, because it was just finally someone figured it out, and it was Van Helsing. So I loved that part. And I will also say that I think Van Helsing and Dracula, Count Dracula, are two of the coolest names ever introduced into the literary world. They're just such awesome names, and every time that I read the name Van Helsing and also Dracula, I smiled a little bit, because it's just cool to actually see that name in the original book where it all came from. And so that was real neat too. But this is where it gets real bad, and this was really the final blow of the book for me, or the nail in the coffin, I should say. Van Helsing, who I thought would be the turning point of the book, when the book finally gets some action, when it finally takes off. Bram Stoker made the fatal mistake of making Van Helsing his most boring character, specifically in his dialogue. He is the most boring, wordy guy. Whereas all the other characters talk pretty much like regular people, Van Helsing will spend like a half a page or a full page paragraph. Blah. Damn it. I was on such a roll too. Every other character talks pretty normally, but Van Helsing will spend a good half a page or a full page in one block paragraph saying what other characters could say in like 10 or 12 words. He just rambles on and just it's the most boring dialogue for him, And he should be like the main character in the book, the central character, really. The protagonist, in a way. The hero. And he's the most boring character of the bunch. Every single time Van Helsing would have some dialogue, even though it should be the most important dialogue in the chapter, I would want to skip it because he was just so wordy and boring. So, in the end, I am going to give Dracula a very thin 2 stars. And really, the only reason I give it that at all is because of appreciating Stoker's contribution, I guess, to culture. Just by introducing us to all this. Count Dracula, Van Helsing, garlic, and all this stuff, and vampires, and biting people in the throat, and turning into bats, and all of that. That is really cool. That has given us so much entertainment value over the decades. But as for the actual book, Bram Stoker's book, his writing, his story basically, or the way he presented it, I would say it's not really even worth reading. But even that said, I do appreciate his contribution. The Dracula character is cool. Van Helsing character is cool. They could be used well. I do not think they were used well by Stoker. But it's cool he created them. And that's it for my drunk book review. Sorry, I never got drunk. I never do. Of Dracula by Bram Stoker. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Okay, that's enough. Hey, I drank about half of it this time. So, because I finished that book, that means I could add another book to my currently reading list. And in fact, I've never actually told you guys which books I'm currently reading. So they are The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner. That's my first book by him. Carson McCullers, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. And I'm not quite halfway through with that one. The Sound and the Fury I just began. Then there's James Fenimore Cooper, The Last of the Mohicans. I'm only about 15% or so through that one. I've been reading that one for a while, just real on and off. And then I am reading Clash of Kings by George R.R. Martin, and I'm just about halfway into that one. So I thought how I would select my next currently reading book is by the almighty random number generator.
Random number generator.
I have a list of 85 books that I currently own that are on my to-read list. Please don't be Angie Thomas on the come up. Please don't be Angie Thomas on the come up. Random number generator 1 through 85. Here we go. And 84. Wow, that's one of the last ones. Let's see what that is. Okay, that was kind of unexpected. It's Imposters by Scott Westerfeld. And this is a signed copy, so that's pretty sweet. I've never read anything by him. I've had this for a few years and really no intention of reading it because I just got it because it was signed. But the almighty random number generator has selected it for my next currently reading book. So I'm beginning to read this book, Imposters by Scott Westerfeld. 5 hours later. Hey, it's me. Okay, time to do a whisper update because it is 12:30 in the morning. I started reading Impostros by Scott Westerfeld, and I cannot stand this book. It's driving me crazy, so I'm going to DNF, or did not finish it, after 21 pages. really, I could have done it after about 2 pages, but I tried to be patient with it. I tried to give it a chance. I gave it all the time in the world, and after 21 pages, I could not take it anymore. Biggest problem, one, it's written in first person present tense, which I don't really like too much, but that's not the biggest problem. There is real short sentences, real short paragraphs, like 2 sentences per paragraph, real short chapters, and it's just terrible, 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 terrible. I cannot stand it. And yeah. Oh yeah, and another problem with the book is it had like every chapter would end with some kind of a cliffhanger. And yeah, I just couldn't stand it. And the thing is, it written the way it is, like real short sentences, real short paragraphs, real short chapters. I think writers think that makes it real action packed because it's like real punchy. But I just think it's annoying and boring. And I want to be able to get into a book, into a story, and I can't do that when it's all real short sentences, real short paragraphs, real short chapters. Occasionally I want to read, a half-page paragraph or a page-long sentence. Not a page-long sentence, that'd be too much. But, I want to have variety in the lengths of the sentences and the paragraphs and the chapters. So I am actually going to DNF this and start a different book.
Random number generator.
So going back through the random number generator, 1 through 84, 46. Susan Mallory, When We Found Home. Another book I'm just not excited about, and also signed, but I'll give it a chance. It can't be much worse than the last book. So adding this one to my currently reading list.